Good morning. I would like to call the Deferred Compensation Advisory Committee meeting to order, January 25th, 10 o'clock in the morning. I'd like to start off with the introduction of a new advisory committee member. So Sergeant Jason Whelan is joining us as an employee representative.
Jason Whelan from the Sheriff's Office. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here and meeting all of you.
Welcome. I'd like also to introduce a new HR staff member. So Michael Ormsby is joining us as our Employee Benefits Manager, and he will be staffing the advisory committee. So welcome, Michael.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here.
All right, next, Donna, if you could please do roll call.
Jennifer Goodman.
Here.
Mr. Whelan. Here. Mr. Hopkins. Here. Mr. Canepa.
Here.
Mr. Woolcamp. Here. For the record, we will show that Ms. Herman, Mr. Keokum, and Mr. Wolverding are absent.
All right, so next we have approval of the minutes for the quarterly meeting of October 26, 2023. Any questions on the minutes?
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have public comment. Any public comment, Donna?
No public comment.
All right, great. The next item on our agenda is the program status report for the fourth quarter from John Stagel of Nationwide.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And good morning to everybody. So I'm not sure if you have the report or if I should share. I'm sharing my screen. I'm not sure if there's anyone that's remote or if it's printed in front of you. I'm not sure how we're following along, but.
What's the first slide look like, sir?
Thank you. Yes. Dark blue, beautiful color on that printing. So appreciate you doing that.
So I believe the committee does all have the document, but if you'd like to share it, that's fine as well.
Okay. Well, as long as everyone has it in front, then I don't believe there's anyone waiting to view it. So again, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And we'll start, if you have it, we'll start on page 3. And page 3 is the plan summary. It's a snapshot of both your 457, which is in the middle column, and the 401A, which is just to the right of it. And then the total on the right side totals up all of the numbers. And I'm just going to actually expand my screen just for 1 second. So on the very right-hand column, that's where the quarter began, and the very top row, which is in bold. So the plan itself started around $513 million. And then we add in contributions. So these are contributions from either payroll deduction or roll-ins. And then we subtract off distributions, which you can see is much larger than contributions, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Then we subtract off fees and loans and other types of activity. And then there is a gain loss, that's market gain for the quarter. So the plan grew by almost $30 million in the fourth quarter. The market was positive, so it cooperated. And then on the very bottom row, you can see the total balances on all of your plans. In the far right-hand column, or sorry, the far right-hand row is the total balance for all of your plans at around $543 million. And that's where the year ended for both of our plans here at the county. And then the next few slides are just talking about the 457 only, so not the 401A yet. We have a section on that after. So we're going to skip a couple of pages, and we're going to go to the overview page, which is page 6. And the overview is just sort of a snapshot of your entire 457 plan at the end of the quarter. So in addition to the balance, which we just discussed, it talks about all features of your plans. We have slides that go over this, so I'm not going to talk about this too much. But on the right-hand side of the page, you see new enrollments, and we enrolled just under 200 people for the quarter. We enrolled 224 last quarter. So we're doing a great job, and Brenda's outstanding, obviously, and we're very, very fortunate to have her with us, and she is doing a great job of getting folks signed up in your plan. And so we're averaging a couple hundred new enrollments a quarter. So I think that's a really good number. Then on the next page, we look at participation. And participation here, I'm just going to talk about a couple of things. One is on the upper left, we have your total participants in your plan. So for folks like Jason that are new, if you want to know how big your plan is, there's 6,905 participants that are currently signed up. And these are unique individuals. Your average balance in the plan is $74,000, just under $75,000. The median balance below that, so the difference is that the average balance, you look up, or if you total all of the participants and you take total plan assets, you divide it, you get a large number. The median is the balance right in the middle. And so it shares a little bit, or tells a little bit of a different story, because you have an older population at the county with a lot of very large balances, and we'll talk about that. So that has a lot to do with the median versus average balance. But we look at average balance typically to look at plans. And then the average number of investments, there's 4, so that would be either large cap, small cap, and so forth. So an average of 4 mutual funds per participant in their plan, which is a really good number. So if you look at the bottom, there's that pie chart, and it shows the employed assets versus terminated assets. And you see almost half of the plan assets are with folks that are no longer with the county. And so we want to do a good job conserving assets as best we can. We're worried about losing them out the door. And we have lost a lot of assets out the door to rollouts, which is happening quite a bit these days in deferred compensation plans. Going to the next page on 8, these are called optional strategies. This is Roth and self-directed brokerage. So your plan does allow Roth investing, which is after tax versus pre-tax. So for those folks who simply want to pay tax up front and not pay tax later, the Roth is a better option versus pre-tax. So there's 880 participants that have a Roth balance, total balance of just over $6 million in just Roth assets. And then if you look below that, self-directed brokerage is a brokerage window offered through Schwab, and you're allowed to put your deferred compensation money into the Schwab brokerage account. There are 13 participants that have Schwab. If you look at the far right side of the page, on the very, very lower right, it shows you how many participants in each age range and the average balance. And there were 2 additional participants, 60 and up, that open up a Schwab account with very large balances. And so we always keep an eye on that. I don't have the Schwab report. I didn't get it yet from Schwab. I think that because of the quarter just ended, so I didn't receive it. I'll send that over, but Schwab does have a more comprehensive quarterly report. But the average balance in Schwab is $166,000, so much larger than your average balance. So participants are investing money outside into Schwab. My guess is that they're going into fixed income because your lineup here is excellent, so they're getting things that the plan necessarily doesn't offer.
I have a quick question. So that percentage, are they taking all of their money and moving it over to that account, or just partial? So I mean, when there's 13 people that are moving it, are they
Yeah.
leaving some money back, or do
They
you not know?
are, yeah. They're required to. So, but I haven't tracked how much of it's going in per person. It'd be a much more in-depth look at it, but they are leaving money behind, but definitely putting a lot of their balance in. Yeah.
So just to share with you, Paul, I've been working with one of our retirees who lives out of state. He's been waiting for the changes we made to the Schwab option so he could get something a little more stable. And he kept the minimum in, which is $10,000. And yes, the rest of his balance, which was over $300,000, is at Schwab now, and he's investing it in CDs and bonds and things that are stable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank
I
you.
have a question as well, if we could go back to page 7. Under terminated, there's it's such a large percentage, 46%. You said you were gonna explain it, but is that by death, loss, or withdrawal, or rolling over, or people leaving and then going over? Do you know what the biggest percentage breakdown of those are? Or is it important to this?
We track it on activity out. Terminated means that there's a term date that Nationwide receives from the county. So when someone separates service, we get a term date on file. And so we can calculate the asset totals of people that are still working versus not. We also track withdrawal activity, and then we track all that, which I have in a couple of slides. But that just means that, again, we receive term dates on about 46% of the assets in the plan.
Thank you.
So they have either separated, they quit, or they retired. We don't really designate which. We just know that they're no longer working for San Joaquin. So Paige and I will talk about this real quick. So contribution, this is money into the plan. Most of it is from salary contributions. Oh, I'm sorry.
So
Paul,
terminated just means they're terminated their employment, not terminating the money that they have in the account.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, their money's still here. They just don't work here anymore. We're not going to get any more new money from them. But thank you for the comment. Appreciate it. So not much here on page 9, just an overview of how the money's coming into the plan. Most of it is contributions through salary, so 5 out of 6.6 million. We did get some rollovers in. Rollovers, again, are outside accounts. You can roll in 457s, you can roll in 401ks and IRAs and things like that. So your participants are And then we have about 3,716 currently contributing. That number fluctuates. So these are people that have an account that are still active, that do have an account or a contribution greater than 0 coming into deferred comp. And if you look at the bottom right, this shows that out of all new money that Nationwide's receiving, just under half is going into target date funds. So with new money, they are doing a great job of diversifying their accounts. So it's a large percentage, but I think it's definitely a positive overall for your plan, because most people don't know what to do. They don't know what a mutual fund is. They don't know the difference between small cap, large cap, mid cap bonds, et cetera. So by investing in target date fund, they're diversifying themselves and they're doing themselves a really good service. And so we're happy with that. The other items to point out: fixed income and cash. For new money, your employees are not taking a lot of are not putting it in secure assets. Only just under 16 cents on every new dollar is going into fixed. So they're taking more risk. And then they also like large cap. So about 17% of every new dollar is going to large cap funds. But again, about half into target date. So they're taking a risk. They like to be in the market, and the contributions show that. And then for distributions, this shows where the money is going when someone terminates and either takes money or rolls it. Where does it go? And so we track all of it. So the lion's share of money out is being rolled out, which people have that right to do when they leave service with any employer. They can leave it, and which we'd recommend, or they can roll it out, or they can do a combination of it. They can take some in cash, roll some out, keep some here, whatever you want to do. So there are really no rules. We of course recommend to talk to Brenda before you make those decisions, but people have rolled out of the plan. So the very bottom in the middle shows where the money is going. The top 5 external payees are receiving about 70% of the assets. So the top 5 are very common. One of them is new that showed up, Stifel, Nicholas and Company. I Googled them this morning. They're a fee-based financial planner out of Missouri. And so the person who rolled that out, it was a very large rollout, $1.8 million went out the door. They sent it to a financial advisor. So they wanted help with their money, and they decided to move it out for, again, fee-based. Schwab's common, Fidelity's common. So we had a lot of rollouts. The economy, we've seen this not just here, but with other plan sponsors as well. So it isn't something that really stands out, because we are seeing a lot of plan leakage, what we call. It's kind of an industry term that we call money out the door. And then we also had a lot of RMDs. So the third row down from the top, you can see the prior quarter versus current quarter. We had 270 more RMDs than we did the quarter prior. And fourth quarter is common for most individuals that are at retirement age to take the required minimum distribution. At some point you have to, and the IRS wants to tax you. And so we had a lot of RMDs in the fourth quarter. So I wanted to point that out too. So that also had to do with why your distributions were a bit higher than usual. The next few pages, I know that Vincent's going to cover it. I won't talk too much about it, though. The only thing to point out on page 11 is the current allocation of your plan itself. So if you wanted to know where the money is currently sitting, we designate it. So about 21% of the money is in target date funds overall. So half of new money is going to target date funds, but around 21% of existing money is in target date funds. Right around 29% is in fixed assets and cash. So these are just the larger percentages. And then about a third of your plan is in large cap mutual funds. And then the pages subsequent, we do list all of your investment options. Highest does as well, so we'll go and skip that. Just a couple of slides left to go before I turn over to Brenda. On page 14, we talk about loans. So we do count and track your loans. If you look at the very upper right of page 14, that's your average loan balance. So 10,156. You're right in line with other Nationwide clients. The average loan that Nationwide pays out is around 12,000. If you look at all of our large plans like the county, so you're kind of right in line. You have 291 active loans currently. 44 new loans were taken last quarter, and 2 were closed or paid off. Loans you can take up to 5 years for any reason. If you wanted to borrow longer for your principal residence, you can. I believe it's up to 15 years. And we also track the general purpose versus primary. No one asks you if you want to borrow for general purpose, you just do. You just contact Nationwide and tell us how much you want. You run a projection on what it's going to cost to pay it back, and then we can wire you the money overnight. So it's a pretty easy process. then just wanted to wrap up on page 15 with online engagement. We like to track online engagement, and the things that we track, one of them is e-delivery. So 70% of all of your participants are getting electronic statements and notifications from Nationwide. Online enrollment, so 25% of the enrollments that we're getting are done online. The rest are filling out a form to sign up, and both are fine. Online distributions are allowed, so when you leave service with the county, you want to take your money out, you can either fill out a form or you can do it online, so 64% of the employees are doing it online. Jumping up to the right, at the very top, beneficiaries, we have 89% of all of your participants, we have a beneficiary that Nationwide has. The county might have them, but we have 89% of those on file. So we're not perfect, we don't have a plan that's 100%. I've never seen a plan 100%, but 89% is a good number, not a perfect number, but it's a good number. So we're actually happy with that. The other 11%, we'd hope that they would tell us, because it's much easier to work with us if something happens to them, their primary beneficiary can simply contact us, and then we talk to them directly. We don't have to wait for court-ordered paperwork. So beneficiaries are very crucial to keep up to date. So again, make sure that your folks know if you ever have conversations, make sure that they do. 88% of emails we have on file, which is great for marketing. A lot of our marketing is digital-based and based on email. And then online accounts. A year ago, we had 30% of your participants had an online account. Now we're up to 56%, so the number is growing fast. And so we wanted to point that out. We're very happy with that number. And it's going to keep growing. That's one of the big initiatives that Brenda has. So when she meets with your employees, probably one of the first things you ask is, do you have an online account? And if not, we'll get you one. Okay, and then the rest of the report is the 401A plan. I won't cover this much. I only want to show you page 17. It's just a snapshot of your 401A. It's a smaller plan than your 457, but still pretty substantial. Start at the year at 25 million, and then again, we add in and subtract off gains, losses, deposits, withdrawals, and finish the quarter at right around 27 million. So lots of stats that I threw out there. I'll pass it to Brenda to give you a field update and let you know what's going on here locally.
Good morning, Brenda DeVecchio, local Nationwide retirement specialist. I'm your face-to-face of Nationwide. And I'm pretty excited. I am starting to expand the departments that I've been able to meet with. So usually I try to make a presence here at County Admin, which I'm going to work on getting that calendar set up. And I've been at Behavioral Health, and last quarter I had the chance to go next door to Human Services Agency. It was really busy there. Actually have a couple of days back to back there. I had the pleasure of meeting somebody from probation last month when I was here, and I've got her card, so hopefully I'll be able to connect with them. And of course, Sheriff's Department is on my mind as well, so I know I need to get cleared with you guys. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about making my presence out there and helping people get started and review their plans. We do have my Northern California team. We do quarterly presentations. We actually did a seminar series in December to close out the year. There was great participation with the employees here, definitely stronger than the other plans that I serve, so that's exciting. We did a class about enrollment. We had 29 employees attend. We do these at lunch, so people can come to see us virtually. We did a Roth seminar. We had about 30 employees in that. Followed by the topic that I did, which is nearing retirement. So it's really geared to employees that are close to retirement, 5 years or so. We had 31 employees for that. And then, of course, always popular Social Security basics. We had 42 employees. So all total, we had about 132, which is great for virtual seminars. So we appreciate the engagement and your partnership in getting that message out to your employees to let them know that we have a lot of education to kind of help them understand their retirement benefits. That's about all I have. I know we did a marketing push last quarter for rollovers, so that people know that they can bring their money in and not lose track of it. And then of course this quarter my flyers are going to be focused on enrollment, which is always a good thing. We're coming up on tax seasons. People start thinking about saving more and reducing their taxable income, so that'll be my focus this quarter for marketing. Any questions for me? All right, thank you. Yes.
Brenda, I just have one thought. In county land, we have, really a large number of employees that retire typically in March, although kind of September and December have started to eke up there. But just that may be something for future thought about communications that, people are often leaving county service, a high number in March, and that may be something we want to try to capture as far as, trying to keep people engaged in the plan.
Yeah, so I do work with the county pension. So we do 2 classes with them a year. So the December class, we actually had 91 employees from the county. And my presentation was again for those about to retire. So we are coordinating with the county to let them know about lump sum deferrals and that they can stay in the plan and how they can take distributions and add to it post-retirement. So that outreach is definitely important, and I'll continue to work on that. Thank you.
All right, moving through the agenda now, the fourth quarter performance report from Vincent Galindo with Hyas.
Thank you very much. Hopefully you can shift reports. The report that I'm going to go through looks like this. It's probably the thicker one of the 3 you may have in front of you. We do have 2 searches that we can go over, but the performance report is more of the thicker one. And a little bit of background on me and my firm, just because I think there's some newer faces in this group. My name is Vincent Galindo. The company I work for is called Hyas Group. Similar to Nationwide, we're a vendor, if you will, helping administer the plan. The crucial distinction, though, is they're the plan record keeper, we're the consultant, and the important distinction between the 2 firms is we are considered a co-fiduciary. And fiduciary is an important legal distinction, and we take that role very seriously. Similar to the county, every recommendation that we make has to benefit the group of participants in the plans. And so, again, we take that role very, very seriously. And just, it's an important distinction because we don't receive any money from the fund managers. We don't receive any money from the record keepers. Sole source of income is from the clients that we serve. I grew up outside Sacramento, a town called Woodland. My desk is in Portland, but most of my clients are in the San Francisco, Sacramento Bay Area. And we serve about half of the California county clients in the state. So happy to be here. If you turn into the report, it's definitely been a tale of 2 tapes. Flip into page 1 past the text-heavy narrative. I just want to showcase more of the economic indicators that we're seeing with some commentary on the economy as well as the markets. I'm going to start on page 5. And one of the economic indicators is in the upper left, the gross domestic product. What you can see, if you want to look over my shoulder, John, the gross domestic product is a measure of our economic activity. That solid line is the dollar value of all the goods and services produced in a country in any given year. That lightly dotted line is the year-over-year change. And a lot of economists view a 2 to 3% GDP growth rate as a Goldilocks economy, not too hot, not too cold. Do you have an extra report? I'm sorry. Looks, Paul, maybe you're 5. Sorry. Do you see it? 4 big charts. Okay, perfect. Okay, gotcha. Okay, sorry about that. So back to my point, that lightly dotted line, the 2 to 3% growth rate is at Goldilocks because it's not too hot, not too cold. And that's exactly what we saw over the preceding year, where we saw a 2 to 3% growth rate. Third quarter number came out at just under 5%, and a lot of economists applauded for that because it's a significant growth rate. I don't know if you saw the news broke this morning that Q4 came in at 3.3% versus a 2% expected. And so that 3.3%, again, really, really strong, at least from an economic standpoint. One of the things that we're seeing, and John highlighted a couple times, is the American consumer drives about 2/3 of that growth rate in the economy. But we're seeing a weakened or maybe fatigued consumer because we're shifting from us as Americans buying things and services with money in our bank and savings account to tapping our retirement accounts. And that's why we're seeing across the board a lot of these distributions, I don't want to say inch up, maybe foot up in terms of higher distributions, higher loan amounts, and that sort of thing. The other shift is we're putting more purchases on our what? Credit card, yes, we're setting record in terms of putting things and buying and propping up the economy, and piling on debt. So that's just something that we're keeping an eye on, is it's a somewhat of a mixed signal where we're seeing a strong economy, but maybe due to an over-levered consumer. But taking a look at the chart on the upper right, the unemployment rate, a measure of full employment is an unemployment rate of about 5%, so it's very rarely 0%. But we did see the unemployment rate as measured by that black line spike to about 15% with the pandemic. It's since settled back down to about 3.5% nationally. It's a little bit higher here in the county at 6.5%, but nationally it's a relatively strong number. And then as we move down into the inflationary gauge, that's the bottom right of the big chart, the CPI or Consumer Price Index. The Federal Reserve has a 2% inflationary target. Last summer, it was a 50-year high at 9.1%, but thanks to the aggressive interest rate hikes to try and cool down the economy, we saw a drop in the CPI to 3.5%, which is still a little bit higher than the 2%, but a lot of economists view that the Fed will settle on a 3.5% number, and thankfully, depending on your view of interest rates, the hikes are probably done. In fact, in taking a look at the cloudy crystal ball, when the Federal Reserve meets in March, we may even see a rate decrease. There's about a 50-50 chance that rates will drop in a couple months. And then when we look further out into the interest rate on the overnight side, in December, we see an overnight rate of about 3.5% versus 5.5% now. Again, that's propping up the markets over the last quarter. Not so much this year, but we'll talk about that here in a second. So as I flip into the next section, any questions or comments about the economy? All right, let's take a look about the mixed bag in the markets. Go ahead and flip ahead to the next page, page 6. This is the bond market. If you take a look at the chart on the upper left, the second line down is the Bloomberg US aggregate. Bond investors call that the AG, and this is a good representation of the US bond market. Historically, the AG has grown about 3.5% a year, not too great, but again, bond investors aren't looking for that home run. They're looking for protection and a nice growth rate, but 3.5% is pretty comfortable over the long pull. In 2022, the AG lost 13% thanks to those aggressive interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve. The AG has come back significantly. So take a look at the quarter. Just in the last 3 months of last year, up almost 7%, where we saw the 10-year Treasury go from 5% down to 4%. A nice gain out of the AG in the last period, bringing the one-year total in 23 to 5.5%. Year to date, however, the AG is negative 1.4%. So a little bit of pullback as of January 1, year to date as of this week. Moving to the next page, this is the US stock market. The chart on page 7, upper right, the first line down is the S&P or Standard & Poor's 500. In 22, this index was negative 18%, a huge rebound last year. You can see for the fourth quarter, the S&P 500 was up 11.7%, bringing the one-year number up 26.3%. So nice numbers there. Year to date is positive 2.1%. So this is one of the outliers that rally has continued into 2024. This is the US stock market. If you flip ahead to the next page, there are about 45 countries outside the US with an investable stock market. So Canada, Mexico, China, Poland, Brazil, etc. The chart on the upper left, first line, the ACWI or All Country World Index, we call that the ACWI ex-US because we strip out the United States. For the quarter, up almost 10%, bringing the one-year number just under 16%. As of this week, year to date, negative 3%. So a little bit of pullback on the international markets year to date in 2024, but a stellar 23 as evidenced by the returns in the book. So nice numbers there. So questions, comments on the markets?
I just had one question back
Yeah.
on that. So the consumer price index in inflation, so where's inflation sit in that page back?
Yeah, right now it's 3.4%. And so if you take a look, the bottom right of page 5, Consumer Price Index, right now it's 3.4%. That's the core number. If you strip out food and energy, because a lot of economists think that food and energy is too volatile, the core number is 3.9% versus the headline of 3.4.
Where are you looking?
That's, I just know because I read the data points. So those numbers are not specifically spelled out on that page.
Okay.
Unless you can kind of see, you infer it by where the lightly dotted line is on the legend, I guess.
Okay.
And back to my point, you can see that lightly dotted line spiked or peaked in June of last year at 9.1. And if there's no 9.1 number, I just know it because of history, but the chart tells that in terms of the legend on the chart.
Because that was always the concern, is people's buying power, and I mean, that's why they're having to go to credit card debt, because obviously all that infusion of cash through ARPA and all those funding sources, now people have their spending habits are still up high and their net income is low.
100%, you're right. It's this mentality that, yeah, we need to continue to spend with sometimes money we don't have, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Corollary to all that, the good news is, and we'll take into the next section, is given the rate spread of the overnight side, remember I said the overnight is about 5.25%. The disconnect, and this goes back to the participants voting with their dollars or their wallets, is there's CDs out there that are paying a lot more. We recently added that money market fund, and if you flip ahead to the next section, kind of this is the executive summary of the overall plans. The money market fund that we added has a spot yield of just over 5%. And so participants now can have access in the San Joaquin County plans with the higher yielding money market fund to compete. I hate to say it compete, but yeah, we're also competing with these outside credit unions and banks that are offering savings accounts or money market funds or CDs that are paying north of 4.5%, 5%. But this hot dot sometimes burns hot, but very quickly. As I said, the Federal Reserve is set to lower rates in the spring of this year, so that 5.25% is probably going to go down. Those money market yields are probably going to normalize down to 4%, maybe 3% towards the end of the year. But regardless, that fund was added, and you can see under the plan notes on the middle left, that money market fund was added in the early part of November of last year. Just under $1 million sat at the end of December, or about $660,000. So participants are taking advantage of that fund en masse. There is another fund note that says consider adding an international index fund. Before I go into that, I just want to pause. Does everybody know what an index fund is, or should I spend 30, 45 seconds explaining what an index fund is? Okay. You have a suite of index funds on the menu now, except for one asset class. And I go back to the international asset category where there's about 45 countries with an investable stock market. And so an index fund is also called passively managed. But before I explain what an index fund is, let me talk about what an actively managed fund is, because I think most people view investing with active management. You have two funds on the menu that invest in JP Morgan, the big bank based out of New York. So let me use that as an example. If I'm an actively managed fund manager, I'm going to take a look at the company JP Morgan and see if it's a good investment. And I'll do my research, my due diligence, maybe take a look at the competition, certainly take an analysis of the management team, the profit stream, all that sort of thing. And I'm going to commit a huge amount of resources to doing my research or due diligence on whether or not I invest in JP Morgan. And then if I own it, when do I sell? So an actively managed fund makes an active choice to invest in a company or a stock, and there's a tremendous amount of resources, and generally the expenses are a little bit higher than most because of those resources. But I, as a fund manager, better beat the performance of the underlying benchmark by being a smart investor in choosing these good stocks or good companies. That's actively managed. About 40 years ago, Jack Bogle said, that's kind of a fool's game. I'm going to start a company that's not going to beat the benchmark. We're merely going to meet the performance by investing in the same companies that make up an underlying index. Most investors thought he was nuts. but he formed a company called Vanguard. And he said, what I'm going to do is if JP Morgan is a component of the S&P 500, and it is, I'm going to invest in JP Morgan, not because I want to or not, it's because it's a component of the index. And so I'm going to track the performance of the index merely by investing in the same companies. That's what an index fund is called. Since computers, not research analyst teams, build the portfolio, expenses are really, really low. That's what an index fund is. You have index funds and actively managed funds on every asset class except for the international space. And so with this new fund change that we're recommending, we thought maybe it's time for the committee to consider adding an index fund, because there are a lot of, they call them bogleheads, in reference to Jack Bogle, who started Vanguard. There are a lot of investors who don't want to overpay to hopefully beat the benchmark. They want to invest at a low cost simply to just gain exposure. And so you may have these participants, I don't know, Brenda may be able to tell you, that invest in those passively managed funds at a low cost, except for one asset class. So that's why we're considering possibly adding an index fund in the international class. Yeah.
So how much less is it? I mean, percentage-wise, are you talking huge percentage, or, so it's just the cost of managing actively, right, to beat the benchmark, is what you're saying? In
Correct.
plain terms?
Correct. So in terms of the fee structure, so if you take a look and flip ahead into your report, on page 35, the Vanguard International Index Fund, sorry, I apologize. See, this is where it gets confusing. Vanguard has actively managed funds as well. And you'll see about maybe halfway, 2/3 of the way down, right before the T. Rowe Price target date, you'll see two Vanguard International funds. One value, one growth. These are actively managed. If you move across the page, second from the right column, you'll see a 0.38 and a 0.31. That's the expense ratio of the actively managed international funds managed by Vanguard. Taking a look at the index funds, and I'm jumping ahead reports, but I'll just call these out. These are the expenses of the proposed index funds. Fidelity has one at 0.03.5%, so 3.5 basis points or 0.035. Fidelity has another fund at 0.06. Vanguard has one at 0.07 and another one at 0.11. So essentially, 90% cheaper if you do the Fidelity International Index. Does that help? Yeah.
It's like 10 times cheaper.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, moving forward, and again, I won't spend too much more time on this, but the questions are really good. If you take a look at the bottom, the fund notes, we are proposing two fund changes. One is, this is an agenda item, it's the Met West. It was recently announced towards the middle to end of last year that two of the portfolio managers at Met West are retiring. The urgency isn't there, but in taking a look at Met West's transition plan with the two main portfolio managers, we're less than comfortable. And so our recommendation internally was to go to our committees and say, it's time to replace them. And we have a search document with Met West and with other replacement candidates prepared for you. We also have a search document for the International Index Fund. But we got blindsided because if you take a look at the next fund, TIAA-CREF, this is a high yield or junk bond fund. The performance has been somewhat mediocre, but we were just alerted that two of the portfolio managers of TIAA-CREF are also departing. We do not have a search document for that because of the surprise, but given the performance as well as the significant management change, at the next meeting, we would be prepared to present a search document for the high yield bond asset class. And so again, because we were caught unaware, we don't have that search document prepared. But there's little urgency because the transition is not going to happen overnight. And so again, that's our forecast in terms of making a fund recommendation. So here's, in a way, after all that, I want to defer to the chair as well as the time. We could conceivably take a look at the two search documents, make a decision today, but keep that ongoing and keep the momentum and make the fund change. At the next meeting, do a third one. That could be somewhat unwieldy at the participant level because now they're experiencing a fund change and a fund add, and then 3 months later, another fund change. You could conceivably make the decision now, maybe keep it in the hopper, and then at the next quarter, take a look at the high yield search, and then make a decision, and then combine all of them. Or the third alternative is at the next meeting, do all three, make a decision at the next meeting, and be prepared to do really one fund change that contains two fund changes as well as a fund add. So a lot to unpack there. Like I said, I will defer to the chair or the committee, but those are really the choices. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna see if the committee had any thoughts of preference of how we approach that.
I just had one question. So why can't you, it's not agendized, so you can't, or we're just not looking at the study? So I mean, obviously, if it's your recommendation, whether we do it now or do it then, why can't we just do all three now?
Because we don't have a search document for TIA CREF. We just found out about the management change. And so we weren't prepared to bring it because we don't have it prepared or agendized, yes.
I've seen those plan changes in the past, and there's really no background on there. Do we ever release why we're looking at that? Or, because these kind of come from the participant view out of nowhere, like, oh, I had money in here, and now they said we're moving over here, it's the closest we have. Do we ever articulate, or could we articulate, or is it permitted legally do we offer any explanations, or do we just have can we add canned language of, due to market conditions, the committee moved forward with, ceasing this fund, and we found this one over here?
Yeah.
Those questions tend to come to me, and so because I'm involved with the committee and I get to hear why we're making the changes, I can explain to people, we did this because, we lost confidence, the fund management changed, or, the performance is not in line with the benchmark. The county's looking at everything, making sure you have the best options, and it goes on the watch list, and then the county decides if they're gonna make a change. So that's kind of how I usually present it, is there's definitely a reason why we did this on your behalf.
Yeah, and I totally get what you're saying, because you, out of the blue, you get a letter and it says Fund A is moving to Fund B, but there's no explanation as to what was wrong with Fund A and why is Fund B better. So as a record keeper, it's not even mandatory that you send out notices. It is in the 401k space, that's an ERISA rule. Here, it's sort of a courtesy, it's a best practice. So nationwide, 30 days prior, we'll send out a notification. It's a highly regulated notification because we can't say too much legally. We can only give the facts as something such as your Deferred Compensation Committee met and voted to replace Fund A with Fund B effective on the date. And so Nationwide is not allowed legally to provide any sort of color or context behind why that fund change was made, only that it's going to be made on a certain day to give notice 30 days in advance. So sometimes employers will send out a notification, usually nothing else is said, and then they come to Brenda or they'll call Nationwide and say, why is the fund change being made? The phone center reps might not know, they'll probably refer them back to Brenda, who usually attends the meetings and will have the information, and they can ask her, but it's typically not provided like that, and I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense or helps you at all, but we're only required to do kind of a standard generic notification. Anything else could be construed as investment advice, which is not legal and not permitted.
It does answer the question. I appreciate the background. Is it possible to add below there, with the stipulations you put in, that you can contact Nationwide rep and include her info in there so that people have an easy point of contact instead of having to research that? Or is that not
We
permitted?
can look. We typically give our customer service number. Let me see if we can. I don't think we have in the past, but we probably could. We don't, and also too, we don't get that many calls on fund change notifications, but let me find out. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
If that's an option. We have kind of a standard template, and see if we can go think outside the box of it, yeah.
Well,
I just want to clarify. So we're either doing 2 today and 1 in the future, or wait into the future and do them all at one time?
Correct.
I'd prefer to do them all at once, but that's just my opinion.
I've read the too prepared. Obviously, we don't have the third, so I'm ready either way.
Okay. Steve, do you have any thoughts?
We're talking about in March, just be waiting to do them all three at once.
All right. So council, as
April.
April, yeah, April. So as far as the agenda itself, we can just state
think-
for the record that,
You can take the motions on the two action items just to continue them to the April meeting you have
Okay.
the April 25th meeting
okay.
for those two.
So just one more point of clarification through the chair. So then, not many people ask about this anyway? So I mean, that,
So in my experience working with the county, anytime there's a basic fund change, people will not understand what it means. And typically, especially something like this, it will impact a very small population of the participants in the plan. So the people who are actually impacted by it will be very, very small. But it will create a lot of questions. So to have everything kind of go out together in a uniform so that people can kind of come to me one time and go, what does this mean? Does it affect me? You know, I'll have the opportunity to address all of the fund changes at one time with people. And it's, you know, while it may increase calls to me, it's a good opportunity for me to help people review their investments. So I love that you guys are on the sort of my train of thought is let's give it to them all together and then I can provide the service. And of course, on the county's website, people can click to make an appointment and all my contact information's right there. So it's really easy to get a hold of me. Yeah. Does that help?
yeah, it just sounds more like makes more sense to do them all together. Obviously,
I would
because if you
concur.
know what I mean, we don't
As a
want.
participant, you know, I used to get those notifications in my own 457 and, you know, that would usually prompt me to call. And so I kind of know what the response will be and I'm prepared for it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to promote paranoia either, so I mean, when you start changing too much, then it could be totally above board, but I mean, people will question more.
Especially if it's not a huge allocation, we're not moving one of the biggest funds in the, you know, in the portfolio, so I think that lends to it.
Yeah, we're sorry. Currently, the Met West Fund, 963 participants in it, so we would send a letter out to 963. And then the TIA High Yield has 277. And so the letter would go to 963 total, but 277 would get both. So, because again, it only goes to those people who have money in those funds. If you're in an index, or let's say you're in an index fund, it's not that one, you wouldn't get the letter.
Do we need a motion to move this to a future date?
Did you want to call, I mean, are we on that portion of the agenda? We certainly can.
Yeah, I was just going to check with Vincent. Did you have
Vincent, if you
anything
were-
else you wanted to cover for your informational reports?
Yeah, just very briefly, let's move off this page.
I have a question. Can you comment to the December thing about the disbursements? So what drives that then? The 10 million?
So John. Like to check, sorry.
That's fine. Is that number broken out anywhere? So I mean, is that, or you're just saying the strategy needs to change to get more money into the account?
It's on, well, also, when you're a participant, it's on your statement. If you're near the age, we'll tell you what the RMD is, and you'll see it on your statement as a reminder before it gets sent.
It's
So
called
we
a
actually
minimum disbursement, so the
Yeah, we
IRS
calculate
says-
the minimum for you.
Okay.
And then, yeah, it's always on the participant website if you're on there, or if you know anyone that's left or near that age. If you're still working, doesn't matter, you don't have to take it. It's
Right,
only
no, I'm
if
just
you're
wondering what
separate.
that breakout is on that 10 million bucks of those disbursements. I mean, is it,
Oh,
It's in your report, right?
it
I mean,
is.
is it-
Let me get to that page real quick. It was a million something.
Okay.
Let me look at it. Here it is.
so 10%?
RMDs were, oh, page 10 on the nationwide report, second line, third line down. Yeah, current quarter was 1.9, so roughly just under $2 million for RMDs. So last quarter was just under $500,000, so 4 times more than the quarter prior. So 1.9 million went out for RMDs.
So, okay, 20%.
So we lost 10 million total.
Yeah.
So that's roughly, just say 8 million for some other reason, people taking money out of their account. If I heard you correctly, you're attributing or potentially attributing some marketing that's going out in the SJ Sarah newsletter. Is that from a company that wants to take that money to manage it?
Yes.
currently?
The credit union, yes.
Quick question to the chair, since I believe she's still on the retirement board. Do you, so they pay to have an advertisement in the SJ Sarah newsletter, and if so, I guess, why does SJ Sarah do that?
So my understanding, since I'm not yet a retiree, is actually the Retiree
Oh, okay.
Association newsletter.
Okay,
Yeah.
I understand.
So thank you, yeah.
And then I can add to that. So I talked to a lot of our retirees, and there's actually, the two biggest reasons they're moving is they're looking for advice, and they're willing to pay for it. And that's not available on the plan, even though, that's something we could talk about if the county wanted to add it. The second reason is I met with a couple here. She had like $750,000 in her account, and her husband has an IRA, and she has this. And she said, with an IRA, you can take your RMD and send it to a charitable organization so that you don't have to pay taxes on it. Unfortunately, the same rule doesn't go across the board to the deferred compensation plans at work. They have to take the money out. They have to pay the taxes on it. And for her, she doesn't want to pay the taxes. They don't need the money. So she's going to have to take like 25 grand out. So they're looking at what the income tax situation is going to be. So those tend to be the two biggest reasons I see people walking out the door with their money is they want advice and they're looking for a more tax-favored situation with their RMD. So I'm trying to talk to people about Roth in-plan conversions, moving that money from pre-tax to post-tax before the RMD hits. That's one of the strategies that we're using, and that would be something I'd love to get into the newsletter once that is an option for us. But there's only so much we can offer, that we don't have an advisor on the plan. We can't give that advice. We don't have the professional management service available in the plan, so people that are looking for that, they're going out the door with their dollars.
And then maybe the third one was the spread in yield between the fixed account and what they could see elsewhere in other financial institutions.
Yes.
So that was stemmed by the recent addition of that money market fund.
Right, right. So the other thing the retirees told me is they wanted choice, and then that's why we talked about expanding the Schwab self-directed brokerage options. And I've had a couple of people patiently waiting for that to happen, but other people that didn't have the patience, they've already left. So again, you know, I just talked to a guy yesterday with over 2 million in the plan. And I'm like, we should talk about, here's all the good stuff that's changed since we took over. And so I'm making a concerted effort to let people know all the great reasons to stay. But when you have somebody who's trying to get those dollars because they get paid on that money, whereas we don't, they're going to push hard to get that money out.
And that's why I tempered my strategy comment, not to say there isn't, but this is part of the discussion that we have on a regular basis, is that there are a lot of forces out there marketing to your participants on the benefits of leaving the plan, and that's why it's important to have that equally, if not more forceful, message, the benefits of keeping it in. So, yeah, we've worked many, many quarters on that message or strategy. All right, well, thank you. So yeah, for that item, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so then we have the International Index Fund search and the Intermediate Term Bond Fund search. So I'll consider a motion to defer to the April meeting.
I move to forward that to the next meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Also still with Vincent, though, legal and regulatory updates is next on the agenda.
Great, thank you. I will also lean on Nationwide, John in particular, about the Secure 2.0. For those unfamiliar, Secure 1.0 was passed, and at that point, it was the most sweeping piece of legislation to come out of Washington, D.C. There were some things that were left still wanting, and then fast forward to December 29. Yes, the end of December in 2022, Secure Act 2.0 was passed with over 90 provisions related to retirement plans. And a lot of them were beneficial, but there were a lot of uncertainties, a lot of lack of guidance, et cetera. And so we thought in spring, maybe summer, the IRS, the Department of Labor, the regulatory bodies will issue some more guidance, and it didn't come. And so as we moved into the end of 23, a year had gone by with a lack of guidance. And as we're starting to roll over the calendar, we're getting a little bit more clarity from these provisions. And so leaning on Nationwide, bringing to the committee a number of optional provisions as there's more availability to record keep those provisions, as well as guidance from the regulatory authorities. And so more to come on that, but we're just entering in more meaningful discussions with our committees. Sound like you have a question? No? Okay, gotcha. Okay, so I don't know if you have an update on Secure 2.0?
Yeah, just the main was the first day of the month rule is gone, thank goodness. But the rest, there are optional provisions. We're working hard to be able to record keep those optional provisions. So like Vincent said, we'll bring those back and see if there's any interest. I only have one plan that has voted a couple in, but we can't even record keep it yet. So it'll be later on this year before. So I know like student loan debt, and there's a couple others. So we can bring those to you, see if there's any interest. But the main one was, again, moving that RMD out, and then first day of the month rule. Those are the big ones. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so if that is it for our legal updates, then we have a virtual event center summary from Nationwide. John.
Thank you. With your permission, I just received, so our marketing team put together the updates. I got it this morning, so I'd like to maybe move that to next quarter if possible.
Certainly.
We also have some more good news to share. We have an additional award that the county's won. I just received notification. I'll also brief the committee on it next quarter. I don't have full stat set, but it's through pension and investments. We submitted your award a second time, and you won a second time, and we'll let you guys know about that too. Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's all because Vincent suggested we should do something for NAGDA, and we won. And I'm not sure where your plaque is. I don't know if you're gonna proudly display that plaque, but we were very excited for you guys.
Yeah, we did share the plaque at the last meeting, and we were just talking about we need to make sure it's posted near our benefits team, so they get the walk by it and see the credit, so.
Pass it around.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, any comments from committee members? No? You sure Supervisor Canepa?
I'll get there. I'm just more dazed and confused by all these numbers. So, I'll understand it eventually, probably when it's time for me to get off the board. But thanks for the information. I mean, some of it, it's just learning it all and probably need to go to a seminar to help understand all of this, so. But thank you for the information and being patient.
All right, if nothing else, our next meeting, Thursday, April 25th at 10 a.m. And I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.